Hi, everyone. As you know, Danette and I got together a little while ago to talk about being a GC. It was a really fun and engaging conversation. We had a lot of questions. We didn't get to all the questions that the participants posed, so we thought we'd get back together for a few minutes and address some of the questions that we missed. So, hey, Danette, it's good to see you again. Thanks for taking the time to join.
Happy to do it.
And so I'm going to launch right in. The one question that we did not have a chance to address, and based upon some recent events, we thought it would be pretty important to discuss, is the question around attorney-client privilege for in-house counsel and in-house teams. And specifically, the person posing the question wanted to know about the role of external counsel in protecting attorney-client privilege. So I'd like you to speak to that for us.
Well, privilege has always been a little tricky in-house, primarily because of how people outside judging in-house counsel, especially regulators, prosecutors, judges, view in-house counsel, because we are employees, often officers, as well as lawyers. Hiring outside counsel, though, is not necessarily a panacea. There is a recent case, very recent case. There was an article this week in Mass Lawyers Weekly about it. Testing attorney-client privilege is going to be argued before the Massachusetts Supreme Court early in December. And ACC has filed an amicus in it. This is the case we're calling the Facebook case, and it's about the Mass Attorney General wanting to get access to records and notes of an investigation, of internal investigations, exactly what the questioner was asking about. And the investigation was performed both by in-house counsel and outside counsel. And so that it's a very timely issue. There's also issues for in-house counsel, I think, if you, quite apart from the issues in the Facebook case, always trying to hire outside counsel for an internal investigation, that there's issues of affordability, visibility, what's the role of in-house counsel within the organization. So it's a tricky issue. Some actions, though, that in-house counsel can take to help protect the privilege. One is always educate business colleagues about what privilege means and what it doesn't mean. And it's usually better to do this when you're not in the midst of an investigation or there's something that's highly charged going on. You also need to be clear as in-house counsel what your role is when you're acting as a lawyer, when you're acting as a business person, how to avoid mixing business and legal advice, making sure you're properly licensed where you're doing business. Every state has different rules about how in-house counsel can be licensed and do business, represent a client in that state, but many of us work in multiple jurisdictions too. And there was again a case that came up in discovery a few years ago in Gucci v. Guess, where it turned out that the Gucci lawyer was actually not an active licensed attorney. And so the magistrate in that case said, well, there's no privilege that attaches to any of their documents. That was changed on appeal to the judge, but in any case, it's an issue that needs to be aware of. I guess the other thing that I always think about, privilege is actually fairly narrow. Your confidentiality obligations, ethically as an attorney, though, are much, much broader. They even extend beyond your employment as an in-house attorney, and so those they actually last as long as the information is confidential. So there was a former GE lawyer who was suspended from the practice of law for several months in Washington, D.C., because she was acting as a whistleblower and went to a government agency about some what she perceived as accounting irregularities at GE. But she also went to the press, and she violated her confidentiality obligations. So there's lots of good materials on this issue on the ACC website for more insight. That's just a little over the top view.
Thanks, Danette. You know, one thing that you stated that really resonates with me is educating your business partners, executives, clients. I've had the privilege of working for multinational corporations, and certainly the way attorney-client privilege is managed in Europe is very different than the United States, by way of example for in-house counsel. And so I've always taken the opportunity, particularly from my European colleagues, to feed them lunch and talk about attorney-client privilege. You know, and it's sometimes difficult to get your business executives' attention on that subject, but once you do, if you can, and they realize the narrowness of the privilege and how it's applied and why it's applied, it can be quite impactful to train executives. The other one quick comment I'll make is that I have observed some organizations, the minute they hire external counsel, they feel then that they can, my word is sloppy. I'm sure they don't say, oh, now I can be sloppy, but you know, stopping observing some of the key indicia of when privilege would apply, how you forward email, who's in your meetings, you know, what the purpose of the meeting is, you know, flipping from business to litigation prep to some other matter. So even if external counsel is on the team, there are certain key things that in-house attorneys have to observe to protect the privilege. And again, there's lots of resources on that on the ACC website and in other places. I'm looking forward to watching the Facebook case and see how that evolves. So
it's
we'll see what happens
also
there.
the oral arguments in that case are live streamed, so
Oh,
you can listen to them.
yeah. So the other question we had was generally around compensation for in-house teams. And I'm wondering if you can speak to that a little bit as well.
Well, every company, of course, has its own categories for how people are compensated, levels, whatever. And the challenge is that I've had in the past at previous companies was that lawyers don't fit neatly into those categories. And those categories are often, folks are rewarded or they get higher levels based on how many people they supervise or how much money they are responsible for in their budget, or some combination of those. And those typically don't happen to be true often of in-house counsel. And so, however, there was an increasing recognition that there are professional roles, professional license roles like accountants, finance people, and lawyers who had to be treated somewhat differently in order to have the appropriate compensation for them. And there are plenty of salary surveys available too, some of them expensive, some of them not, so that you can get a comparison among companies in the same geographic area, similar size and roles for in-house counsel salaries. But you do have to kind of take them out of the normal, usual compensation analysis.
Yes, I would agree with that. And as we evolve as a profession, an in-house profession too, there are tools now, technical tools, that are helping folks do their jobs more efficiently and do them in different ways. Matter management, you know, cradle to grave litigation management type things. So back in my GC days, we did start to look at metrics that were measurable. And those can be tools that folks can look to as well to couple that So when you're speaking with your CFO or your CEO about this type of thing, it gives them something that is a bit more tangible, something that they can relate to a little bit more.
Yeah, that's a whole other topic too, is measuring the value of the in-house team.
Exactly, yes. So, well, thanks, Danette. There's one thing, we had a question as well when we were in the program about being the female GC. And I wanted to take an opportunity just to make a couple of comments about that. You know, both you and I, Danette, were really, I think, lucky or privileged to have had good experiences in our various leadership roles. But I do think as women in leadership, there are certain steps that we should, or anyone should be taking, you know, not necessarily just women in leadership, but really ensuring that your teams are diverse. I always, when I'm engaging with external counsel, I want to make sure that there's diversity on that team, whether it's gender diversity or other types of diversity. I look for that. I happen to take a lot of pleasure in mentoring young women who are coming up through the ranks and promoting women within the organization. So any closing thoughts, Danette, before we sign off?
This has been fun, interesting, thought-provoking, and I hope it's been helpful.
Well, it has, and we really appreciate you giving us your time. And thanks again, everyone, for joining in. We'll be doing another Be the GC right after the new year, hopefully sometime in January. So we look forward to talking with you again then. Take care.